Okay, now we are live. Welcome to Rewriting. I did click the button for those of you that are coming in and watching right now. It did not register. My computer has been glitching today, and I just gave this wonderful lesson. And I don't want to repeat it because I want David to get up here, but I gave this wonderful lesson to no one but David because the live button did not actually connect. So I'm going to reboot my computer when this is all over. So I'm just going to bring David up. Okay. So David Chametzky is a deep message expert. I keep wanting to read that as deep massage expert. You know, that really messes me up. A speaker, author, podcast host, and producer, a true pathfinder with a message to uplift lives in every way by empowering individuals and groups day by day through the use of finding the story within each of us that will up-level us. Through the techniques he uses, he finds content within you to bring more healing, clarity, and insights with his unique guiding principle so that you can grow and use your story to overcome obstacles and achieve that next level in life. And anyone that knows me knows I'm all about the story. So let's bring up David, who is probably really amused with me right now.
I gotta say, it was some great stuff, man. So, at some point, we're gonna have to tell somebody the story, or you'll get to use it again
I'll
because I
use it
think
again.
those are very, important and apropos. Is that one of the obstacles that I talk about? One of the obstacles that we think that are out there that are really aren't out there. That was one of the messages Shiraz shared with me. I guess I had a private. Uh, it was great.
That was funny. Oh my God. Like 3 times today, I have clicked things and they just didn't work. And you would think like, and I've just been talking about programming behavior. I should have double checked that click when I hit live stream.
Yeah, it's same thing here. As I could have been like waving at you, and I didn't look. I was like, "You're like, where did it go?" And I didn't even look for the live button. But I'm glad we're finally here, and
You're
that's
here.
what it is. It's all about lessons and how we, a new way to focus, right? Being more
Yeah.
present, especially when things are challenging us and moving forward.
All right. So David, tell us about this whole thing about deep message expert. What is a deep message expert? I love a deep massage expert. What is deep message?
While I can give massages, I don't know that I'm not definitely not an expert. I'm not licensed to be a massage therapist. But what
Okay.
I do is I listen to people's messages, and everybody thinks we all have messages. We all have stories in our life, as you know, and what we do with those stories. But sometimes the story that we tell is not the story that needs healing, or it's not the story as entrepreneurs and speakers. What we need to do to effectively talk and teach others how to heal through their traumas. So by diving a little deeper, we get to talk about your story, also build a lot of other things, a lot of collateral if you're an entrepreneur. And if you're an entrepreneur, what are you going to do with that story? Sometimes we just need to heal our story, and that's a really powerful piece, as you know. But when I
Mhm.
work with my entrepreneurs, uh, we build their story and figure out what collateral we're going to build. Either a book we're going to write, we're going to have the opportunity to maybe create a podcast or work on the stories you tell on stage. How you can use a lot of the stories in your life to teach. Much like earlier today, you just made a perfect example of just living and traveling back home, and you had a story about the airlines and that nobody wanted to sit in an empty row, even though the rest of the plane was crowded. The obstacles that we sometimes have are our own limiting beliefs. And once we can overcome our limiting beliefs, that's where there's so much more power that comes into things.
All right. I absolutely believe that. My book How to Rewrite Reality is done in a story metaphor because I've learned the power of stories because facts don't stick. If they're outrageous they might, but stories stick. So
Well, because you could imagine yourself. I've written some books also like that, and that's where a lot of my posts on social media sometimes are stories or poems, because then it removes everybody from it. And you can watch it from a safer perspective for the people who want to dive down into it.
Okay, so what are some of the books you've written?
So I wrote a couple of compilation books like most other entrepreneurs, but
Mhm,
the first book I wrote was is when your heart when it's your time to soar. You know,
mhm.
and it's about some of the stories that I've come through and my pathfinder perspective notes in it. So you could hear my story and you're like, okay, it's a nice story, that's entertainment, but why is it valuable to me? But it reminds us, like one of the first stories I had was of a girlfriend who had passed away. She was killed by a drunk driver, but I told her a nice story about how just sneaking out when you get into college, you get that first credit card. And so I snuck out to San Francisco for a weekend to be with her, and we had a great weekend. And then years later, she passed away. But I always remember the love of that weekend, the enjoyment that she didn't know I was coming out to surprise her. You know, love is so powerful when you get to surprise somebody that you really care. And the love that I might have had then at 19 is different than the love I hold at 55, but it's still that pureness of wanting to do something for somebody else. And when you do that with no expectations, that's beautiful, unconditional love. So there's lots of little in that book. There is. Then I wrote another book called Redemption, which is my first fiction book, and that book is all about just this story of a late teen girl going through some challenges of being with her mom. They were raising horses on a horse farm, and the challenges of dealing with a mom's partner, relationship, and also just being in that teenage angst, and how we can find redemption within actions or redemption in the story that we tell ourselves. And then lastly, I just put out a comic book in January called The Pathfinder, and
Yeah, a
also
comic book?
yeah, I have a comic book. Yeah, so
I
here,
gotta see this, I gotta see this.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it's very high end quality. Well, I guess we're gonna see each other soon, so we'll make sure we get you a copy.
Alright.
And that story is about again a love. We have an argument with a partner. The gentleman leaves and then misses an accident or not, and then goes into this new world, this where he meets Mr. 5S, which had two names. One is because we tap into our lives through our senses. So when you want to get healed, as you know, there's lots of different ways. And if you can tap into your senses, or when you tap into your senses, there's much more power in healing through your senses. And the story takes a nice little journey, and at the end, it's also sort of a play on Sisyphus, where the other S comes from, because anybody who knows the story of Sisyphus, that's the guy who rolls the rock up the hill and it goes back down. But the trick that most people don't know is that at the beginning he felt that that was a punishment, Sisyphus, but in the end he found some joy in doing that because it was his task. That was his purpose, to go through life, to push the rock, or to teach people how to overcome their stories. And that's how I feel I am. I am because somebody once asked me, when they read my books, my next door neighbor, she's always trying to figure out which characters and things like that. And she asked me about the comic book. And I said, you're really smart. I go, all the characters are me, both the gentleman who had a problem with his partner, but also the man who was able to heal himself because of how I able to get through it. And that's really powerful. So it's a really great story, and I'm keep writing, and I'm doing a whole bunch of things. It's I find that as one of my healing pieces through the art of storytelling, as you had mentioned.
Alright. And the story I'm interested to hear is about the title of this episode, which is "Suicide to Soaring." So, David, okay, I know there's this we're about to go deep on this one. What happened there?
Yeah, so much like the rest of our coaches, we know how to help others, right? The shoemen's kids don't have shoes, so I knew that I was helping lots of people through some really serious situations, but I wasn't taking care of myself. This was about 5 years ago, and a lot of things were piling on to me in my life personally as well as professionally. And at one point, I decided I was going to take the big plunge, not jumping off of something, but I was going to commit suicide. And that was really obviously a pivot point in my life because I was helping people. So I stepped away from my practice and my work, and I went to go heal myself. I dove deeper into who I was as my life was blowing up. I got divorced, and my dad had passed away. Then had to move my mom. There's a lot of personal angst that was coming on. Having two teenage girls were a challenge, and that was my decision. And I didn't realize the things that needed to be done. And I thought I was already healed from all the past traumas. And we don't realize the things that we do. And it was right before the pandemic. And during the pandemic, I spent a lot of time, like most of us, by ourselves. And I started reading a story about that girl who passed away. And I started crying, like deep crying, and it came out of nowhere. So I reached out to my therapist and talked to them. And, we have all these different traumas. And for that, that was a survivor guilt because I was the last person to talk to this woman. And I told her to go to the party that night. While she didn't drive, she was hit on a sidewalk by a drunk driver. I still felt guilty that, maybe if I didn't tell her to go, something else would have been done differently. And now I've learned through that darkness how to assist other people where I've gone through other dark periods in my life in the past 5 years that I was able to handle. So I knew how to handle it. You never know what you're carrying, as you know, in the work that you do. You never know what you're carrying until you get the right questions asked. And for me, that right question was, do you love yourself? Right after my suicide attempt, I went to an acupuncturist and she was like, well, do you love yourself? And I froze. And I was like, okay. And if you freeze, you don't love yourself. Now I don't hesitate. I was like, I didn't know that that was even an option. And now, not only do I love myself, I know what I have to do, the resources, the continuing resources. I was like that story I tell all the time about having a gym membership, but not attending the gym, right?
Hmm.
Don't worry, I'm good. I have the gym membership. Well, if you don't, nothing's going to change. Same thing for me. I knew how to help us other people, but now I'm consistently making sure that I take care of myself and manage my own resources and also become more honest and more authentic to myself.
Nice. Yeah, there was a couple things that you said there that just really popped up for me. Number one is like you thought you'd gotten there,
Yep.
and then there was more stuff to deal with. Right? And the thing I always tell people is unless you can like walk on water and manipulate reality around you, you still got work to do. Right? So you just haven't pushed up against the next level yet. Yeah.
Well, it's that ego, and that's I used to have a nickname when I was a kid called Kid Ego,
Mm.
and that when I attempted suicide, there was a 36-hour period that I was actively trying to do all this, and so I say now that Kid Ego died that day because when you have to tell your kids what you did or the public what you did, you have to lose a little bit of an ego. I can't be like, well, I know it all because then people go, well, look what happened to you there. Like I've already had questions like that. Well, how do you know you're not going to do it again? I go, well, now I'm more observant. I'm in the present more than I'm in the past or the future. And
Nice.
because of that, I'm aware of what I feel. And when I don't feel well, I know I have to do something, either short term, like sometimes you just have a bad day, you're allowed to have bad days. But if it becomes a pattern, there are resources that you use. And that's what I do is I teach people resources as well as how to manipulate their story, how to really get the story out of them to also do some healing.
Wow. Yeah, I think we're going to experience a little bit of that in just a little while. The the other thing that came up was the survivor's guilt because I find this fascinating. I feel I've pretty much stepped out of it, but it's that place of compassion where I want this person back in my life. How could I have changed the past? And there's nothing you could do. And instead, we just put guilt on ourselves for the thing that there's no way we can change. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I thought, I was obviously sad at that time. I was about to get engaged to this woman, so it wasn't somebody that was just a little friendship. But you don't realize how much pressure you put on yourself and the guilt. I was like, okay, I'm over it. And at that point, it was almost 35 years when I started just, sitting around the pandemic rather than watching Netflix. I started looking at some of the poems that I wrote for her and things like that. And I all of a sudden, without even any time, I just started crying like a big snotty, wetty, yucky cry. And I was like, where'd that come out? And I was like, okay, I'm not prepared to handle that. I was able to handle it by myself, but I need to research further. And then that's where, as you know, when you work with somebody, there could be all these triggers that we don't know that are there. And
Mm.
I've experienced that in my life, but never to that level. And I thought I had gone through all the triggers that I had, and I had not.
I had a similar experience. The weirdest thing for me is I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Neverland with Johnny Depp.
Yeah. Yep, yep.
At the end, when he's leading the woman to basically her death,
Yep.
I just started bawling, and I didn't know why. I like logically, I figured it's triggering some past memory, but I was gone for like 10 minutes. Going, what
Yep.
the hell?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, I've done that, and I don't know what shift has gone in. I feel more emotional now. Maybe I'm more, tied to my emotions, or there's times that I'm just like watching something and then the thought comes into my head and I'm like, what? And I write it down because then I go dive deep into myself and figuring out like what's going on. Because I do now, I'm able to balance and I'm able to sometimes be my best client because then I want to heal or at least understand my feelings around certain subjects.
All right. I love it. Okay, so we have come to that point in the program. If you're new to the program, what happens is coaches I bring on here coach me for about 15 minutes, and then we flip it around and I coach them. So with David, I know what he does, but I've never seen him coach, and I have no idea what's about to happen. So you explain this to me, please.
Okay, so I mean, I know you've done a lot of healing, so, but I'd love to hear some of the stories that you feel might be kind of holding you back, or an area you'd like to even expand yourself to. So it's not only about what holds us back; it's how to grow ourselves. So you've had some tremendous growth in the past year. Why don't you share just a story that you might have around that growth?
So actually, when you're talking about things that might come up, one thing that came up at this workshop was uh, they do this thing called whoosh. So after if someone speaks, then the whole group just goes whoosh, which is sending love to them.
Mm,
And I came in because I was staffing. I came in from doing some duties and jumped in to be in part of the class. And they said, Shiraz, can you share this thing? And it was on some sales techniques. So I shared it. And then they went to the next person. And I thought, oh, we're just going each person and we're going to whoosh everyone at the end. But then they shared their thing and then they got a whoosh. And then the next person shared their thing and they got a whoosh. And so then I'm sitting like, well, why the hell didn't I get a whoosh? Right. So after the next person shared, I put up my hand. I was like, excuse me, before I go to the next person, how come I didn't get a whoosh? And the facilitator says, Shiraz, why do you really need that whoosh? And I'm like, what? And she goes, why do you feel you need to interrupt this whole process so you could get your whoosh?
hmm.
And at first I was like in resistance, going, what? Why are you going this direction? Like everyone else got a whoosh, shouldn't I get a whoosh too? But what came up is as much as I felt loved in that room, part of me still feels like I don't fit in and I'm an outsider.
Mm,
And
sure.
so I get different treatment than everyone else.
Sure. Yeah. I've heard you speak about that, and and that's where we sometimes find out. So when you felt, so is there a time in your life? Just we'll just ask a quick question. Anything you want to share?
Mhm.
Is there a time in your life that you've always felt this? I know that that's been a constant trigger in your life.
So for me, absolutely, because we moved here when we were 3 years old from South Africa, and we stayed in one school for 1 year, the next school for I think 2 years, the next school for 2 years, the next school for 1 year, and then so I kept trying to fit in. It's almost like what were they like the army brats who keep moving, except we were just within like the same city, different neighborhoods, and but I had to find a new school over and over and over again. And so anytime I started to feel like I was fitting in, I get pulled out and then
Yeah.
start the process again.
Yeah. So So while that has happened, I'm assuming, and I'll ask you the question: did you
Mhm.
find it hard to make friends at that time, or recognition that of people wanting to be with you?
It was actually easy to start making those friends, but it's still, okay, now that I'm talking to you about it, I get it. It's still that I should not get connected because I'm gonna move again.
Mm, right,
And so I was making myself the outsider.
right, but right, and because you have that thought about that you're the outsider, then you know you need the same as everybody else, and you weren't experiencing the same as what you are.
Yeah.
So, what I would say is one of the techniques that I use is a lot of people hear about rubbing your hands, and what I'd like you to come up with is one word that might feel uh, good for you. I'm not gonna come up with a couple in my head, but what's a
Mhm.
word that you would like where you need to be supported, where you felt welcomed?
A word where I felt welcomed.
Yeah, where you feel welcome because it sounds like the the part is that by being excluded, I want to
Yeah.
reverse it and turn it into a place where you feel welcomed. Like a community or uh, being part of it. It doesn't have to only be one word. It could be a phrase like "I'm part of something."
Actually, what's coming up is embraced.
There you go. Okay. So what
Okay.
I'd like you to do is, if for a few seconds, if you could just say that word "embraced" for a few seconds.
Okay. Embraced. Embraced. Oh, that's bringing up emotion. Embraced. Embraced.
Mm.
Whew. Embraced. Embraced.
Mm.
Ooh, that's better.
That's good.
Embraced. Embraced. Ooh,
How's that feel? Okay, and
feels good.
I know something happened because I could hear your voice,
Yeah.
and
'Cause
and you might have felt the energy shift. I mean, you're very
yeah.
attuned with yourself, but that's the release that we have. We hold it in our amygdala. It's a fight or flight response area in our brain for the audience, but it's those little pieces of power that we have within ourselves, and that's why I didn't want to suggest a word for you, and I
Mhm.
want to guide you in a way that might have, been a little forceful, and because I knew it was a difficult situation, but I knew that you would find the right word, and I love that you were embraced, and I hope you know that you are embraced wherever you go, that you are included. I'm not you and I have. In fact, when I see you next, I'll make sure we give a physical hug to
All right. Wow, I did not expect that much emotion to come up with that exercise.
It's incredible what we release and when we know what we need to release, and that's why it's a very personal thing. I wouldn't have done it without knowing you before, that you're able to do it. Without knowing somebody, I always try to walk them in. I wouldn't have brought him in so quickly.
Mhm. Oh, okay. All right.
And what's nice is you could do this yourself, and that's when I work with people
Mhm.
on their stories and things like that. I always make sure that they're able to do that. So you can use this anytime with any word. If you're having a tough problem, it's just it starts to create delta waves in our brain, and through those, and by using the right words, it helps us kind of rewire or optimize our brain in a more healthier way.
So what's the significance of moving the hands?
That's what creates the delta waves. So there's a few different ways to create your delta waves. It's just easier. You can rub your shoulders uh, or on your forehead, and it always relaxes you. It will always relax you. But if you're in the middle of out in public and you're just rubbing your hands, people won't notice. But if you start rubbing your shoulders, people might know. But most people also don't know that if you keep rubbing your head, it will
Mhm.
calm you down. And a lot of people don't know that. And I know you do a lot of traveling, so I had a story to tell you. There's a
Okay.
baby crying on a flight, and I said, "Can I just show you something to make this baby stop?" Right, and so I showed the mom. I said, "You're going to touch your baby. I don't, I try not to touch." And she showed. She goes, "Oh my God, he never gets quiet like that." I go, "Well, now you have a tool. So now you have a tool, and anybody who's been listening will have a tool to just always. I call it the reset button, and there's a
Mhm.
lot more to do with that reset button, but that's one of those pieces.
So you had her do the thing on the forehead with the
Yeah,
baby?
yeah, just the forehead on the baby. I said you can, rub the baby's hands, but I did it on the forehead because that's how most moms do that, and the
Hmm,
babies calm down. And it's just a scientific bodily function of creating the delta waves, which are the brain waves we use when we go to sleep anyway
hmm.
at night.
So do you know Jay Souter?
Yeah, no, Jace. Yeah,
Okay, so you know he and Betsy are about to have a baby.
yeah.
So you probably want to give them a call. Like,
I'll reach out to him. Yeah, I've helped many a baby's night, overnights. I wish I knew it when my kids were little. I tease my daughter now. I go, I once offered you $1,500 US
mhm.
uh, to be quiet on an Easter night because she had colic, and she until we found the right way to get her through that. That was not a fun night as young parents.
Oh wow. I want to go back to this comment. You know, it was good if you got Shiraz into his feelings. This is the second month in a row that I'm like almost crying on my own show. Right? So,
Well, that's
um,
it's healing. Hopefully, it's all about healing.
absolutely. And Dave is today's Oprah. You get a tool. You get a tool.
You can get a book. You can get a book.
So, yeah, no, I love this that they're simple tools, but really powerful.
Yeah, and that's what I love teaching is that the simple tools, and that's what I've found along my journey. And I've helped people with severe traumatic experiences in their lives. I work with veterans at times, and one of the stories is a veteran from Vietnam had
Mhm.
some nightmares, and I worked with him. He overcame, and he came back to me about 2 weeks later. He punched me in the arm. He goes, "That thing you did with me." He goes, I go, "What's the matter?" He goes, "I don't have those dreams anymore." And he's like, then he gives me a big hug. And I go, "Well, if you want him back," and his girlfriend then comes over and he goes, "No, no, no, we're good now." Because he would wake up in the middle of the night. When you're in those periods and you have those pieces where you need to break the patterns, but we don't know how, or sometimes we can't do it for ourselves.
Hmm. Wow. And apparently, I need a new sponsor.
That's Kleenex.
All right. We have a little bit of time. Do you have another tool you can share with me?
Yeah, so one of the other things I would say to people is, when we're feeling a little stressed, this is a little bit again more when you're by yourself or in a place that you feel safe. Is put this. I know you're a big lover of the universe,
Mhm.
so when you need to put it in the universe, put all the bad things that are going on in your life. If you need to get rid of them, so put them in a box, and
Okay.
then so just mentally put them in the box. I was late, the plane was delayed, whatever might have happened. Create that box, crush it down mentally, turn it into a ball, but really crush it down, and then
Hmm.
even kind of spin it like a. I guess I'm going to say Meadowlark Lemon, the Harlem Globetrotters, or a
There's a
basketball player.
reference I haven't heard in a while.
Okay, yeah, I'm old, but spin that ball, spin that ball, spin that ball, throw it out into the universe, and then the universe is going to come back. It's going to like be a boomerang, but it's only going to bring back because the universe does bring us so many different things, but it will always give us our highest good. So when you catch it, and I don't want to hear everybody knows how to catch from the universe, catch it and bring it into your heart. Hold it, but make sure you really bring it hard into your heart. Make sure it comes into your heart. And when you do that, that's so powerful because the universe will only return all the good that it needs for you, not the bad. It will filter out. It's part of the universe's love filter.
That sounds like it would take some basketballs. Is that what that was? Okay, so that sounds like it would take some practice or training because I've just created this ball that's all the negativity, and I throw it out, and I really have to be clear that just the positive is coming back, because my first instinct was, why is the negative coming back? Like, why am I
See, and if we go through the dark, with a little bit more time, that's what
Mhm.
we do is we talk about all the things that we love that are
Mhm.
going to come back to us, and the
Oh,
things that we're able to do. Because the universe really does filter out, and it really does want our highest good. And by doing our highest good, it will multiply it. As if you do something good, you're like, I might do something good. The universe sees it, and it goes in that box of karma, and it returns not necessarily directly relational to that same person, but somewhere down the line, you receive so much more than you've ever given.
hmm.
And the universe knows what's in your heart, and that's why we bring it to our heart. I always say, stay out of our head and return back to our heart when I ground. That's why I do a lot of teals. Whenever you see me with my teal suit, it's all about the grounding that really comes into things. And when we're able to ground ourselves, is getting out of our heads a little bit more.
Nice. Okay, cool. Thank you, David.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
So we are going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to be doing some energetic magic on you.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Let's go to the, where is it? Network commercial. Here we go.
Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing yourself, understanding your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every day for exclusive programming, special events, and a community to call home, where we invite you to explore, change the way you look at and live your life, and go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com.
All right, we are back, and I am about to do some magic with Dave Chametzky. So, if you have not seen the show before, what's about to happen is Dave's going to tell me about some area in his life that he feels stuck, or if he's got a new goal, we're going to clear the path to it by removing any of the blocks towards the path. So, we'll have a discussion about that. So, when I talk to you, I can tell when your conscious beliefs match your unconscious beliefs. So, whenever they don't, I will say that's not coming up true. Whenever we find that there's a discrepancy, we're going to dig down to find out what the underlying story is that's running in your unconscious mind. And when I get to that story, I'm going to say, well, are you willing to step out of that story? If you say yes and you mean it, and again, I can tell if you mean it or not, it will shift in that moment. For the spiritual people, there's a big energy shift. For the more technical people, we're actually rewiring Dave's neural connections. But it's coming from a place where you are saying yes, not yes, you have permission to go change it. I'm not going to do anything to change it. It's you that are doing the rewiring. So if you're not solid in your yes, nothing works. And here's the cool thing, because of this is how it works, if you are watching, even if you're watching the replay, when I ask the question, are you willing to step out of the story? You can say yes, and it's going to shift for you too, because you're doing the work. I'm just the guide to what needs to be shifted. So, and then the final thing is when that happens, when energy shifts for me, I tend to yawn and cough. So that's going to be happening for the last 15 minutes of the show. And be prepared. And Dave, I'm pretty sure you know how your body reacts with energy shifts. So you're good. What do you want to work on?
So one of the limiting, I was thinking about that because I knew how this was going to go. I'm not worthy. I think that was something that hit me recently, and I think that's something I'd like to work on.
Okay. Who taught you that you're not worthy?
Um, Friends growing up, there was times I too was excluded, where they would. Again, it was the story that I'm telling myself, but there was times you were just left out, not necessarily personal. I don't know that they chose to leave me out because I was included on later. But
Mhm.
the feeling of being left out or left behind is something that's powerful for me.
Okay. So we're going to hit it at the top level, and then if we need to, we'll go deeper. So, are you willing to step out of the story that you're not worthy?
Yes.
Okay, it's shifting a little bit. The thing to remember is that people that don't feel they're worthy treat other people like they're not worthy,
Mm.
right? It's just projection.
Mhm.
So if you're getting treated like that by the other kids, you're just surrounded by a bunch of kids that don't feel that they're worthy. And it's those projections are just being passed around from kid to kid to kid.
Sure.
So as an adult, when you look at it from that point of view, it's like, oh, you were just surrounded by people that weren't worthy. So you just picked up the story. Then it has way less power over you.
Mm.
Okay. So that's starting to hit. I can feel that starting to shift now. The other thing is it feels like it's going further back. How did your how were you with your parents?
What do you mean? I'm everything was fine as a kid, or I perceived everything to be fine as a kid.
Yep.
I grew up in a fairly loving household. There was yelling and trauma, as I realized afterwards, but uh, for the most part, I'd say it was a loving. I don't know if there was any worthiness. Well, I guess the issues are tied to, even though our family didn't have a lot of money, other families seemed to be able to do more. So it's that,
Okay.
you know, again, I guess a different definition of worthiness.
Okay. So there's two things that are coming up there.
Mhm.
Was your family not worthy?
Probably there's instances where I might have felt that way.
Yep, that's coming up true. So are you willing to step out of the story that your family was not worthy, therefore you are not worthy?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a big one.
Ooh. Okay. And the interesting one that's coming up is should you have been able to fix those moments where there was fighting, where there was trauma being caused?
No. Um,
That's not coming up true.
yeah. I've been looking at it now.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would have loved to step in, and as a teenager, I did. I didn't have a good relationship with my dad till basically the last year of his life. You know,
Okay.
so there's that part of, and I still feel, I guess, in the that I am worthy, that I defend. I'm a protector. So while I might not always have treated everybody around me properly, I know that I've always protected them. That's similar to what my dad. So he might not have treated me properly at all
Mhm.
times, but nobody could mess with me.
Okay.
He could mess with me. I was his people, and I might have, not I might have, I have kept some of that patterns until I recognize that pattern.
Okay. So I want you to get this.
Mhm.
You're a protector now. That's how you've defined yourself.
Yes.
Most people define themselves as a protector because they weren't able to protect early on.
Right.
And so as a little kid, you wanted to protect your family, but you couldn't. You were just this little boy,
Mhm.
and all this stuff was going on around you. So that created this feeling of unworthiness. I'm not worthy enough to protect people. So you decided I'm going to become a protector.
Mm.
So, and really, there's nothing that little boy could do to
Right.
resolve it. But that he didn't know that because he was just a little kid. He's like, I'm supposed to be able. I
Mm.
need to fix this. There's yelling going on. I need to fix this, and I can't. So obviously, I'm not worthy enough to fix all this. So are you willing to step out of that little kid's story that you're not worthy?
Yes.
Okay. Now the flip side of that is you've defined yourself as a protector.
Yes.
As a protector, you have to keep attracting people into your world that need protection because you've made it your identity.
Mm.
When you stop being a protector, it doesn't mean you stop protecting people. It means you can still protect as needed, but it doesn't become your identity.
Mm.
Because when something becomes your identity, you have to keep bringing it in so you feel like you have value in the world. If you don't, let that just hit Jessica. It's like, ouch. So when you don't need to protect people, if it comes up, you do it. But otherwise, it happens less and less. The people around you become self-sustaining. They step into their power because they're not stuck in your story. Because a lot of times our story hits them, so they create a situation where they need to be protected. So you can jump in and you can feel valuable. So are you willing to step out of the identity that you have to be a protector?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of layers there.
Yeah. Yeah. I get this because I used to be in savior complex.
Mm.
And I would always date women that needed to be saved. And as soon as I got them to a point where they felt like they were saved, they would dump me because they didn't need me anymore. And then I just keep repeating the pattern.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. How's that feel? Better, worse, the same, different? No wrong answer.
Yeah. It's great what you've said. So I don't feel different, but
Mhm.
it's given me some clarity, and it definitely helps with some of the layers, and it makes me see things differently, and that's really powerful.
Okay. Cool. All right. Is anything else coming up for you?
Yeah, no, I think it's just related. I think years later, I had that where so it's just as that worthiness still. There's times that when I'm at a networking event, right? So everybody's talking, and I'm just like bouncing from group to group. I still feel that's where I was diving prior to. Is you're still worthy. I don't have to justify my worthiness, but and that's where I've been working uh, by myself. But I would love your guidance along that as well.
Okay. So with the networking, you're moving from group to group, but you're not staying and getting deep into
Yeah,
each.
I don't feel like yourself. I don't feel connected. Like while I'm in the group, I'm 100% there. But as soon as I leave the immediate group, I'm not there. They continue on with their lives, and that's where I feel that I'm not worthy. Like I didn't add value to that conversation, which is my belief, not what people have said.
All right. Do you want to stay connected to them?
Yes.
See, that's not actually coming up true. Do
Hmm.
you have to protect every person you connect with?
Not I want to stay connected with them, but not in a protecting way. In those instances,
Yeah.
they don't. That doesn't feel to me as a protecting way that I have to be there to protect people. It's more of the connections I'm seeking. I want to be part of the team. Is what I'm just hearing.
Yeah, but that's not what's coming up true for you.
Okay.
When you said I want to be part of the team, that did not come up true. And here's the other side to, and part of it would have shifted, but I want to keep going with this.
Yeah.
If you feel you're the protector, then anyone you bring into your world, you have to protect. So you will unconsciously disconnect yourself from a lot of people so you don't have to add to that layer of protection.
Hmm. Okay.
But how it shows up is, I'm trying to make that connection, but then it's just not there. It's actually what you're causing to protect yourself from having to protect too many people.
Okay.
So, are you willing to step out of the story that you need to protect everyone that's in your world?
Yes.
Okay. What do you feel are the ways you bring value other than protection?
My thoughtfulness and kindness,
Mhm.
genuine, just even the knowledge base that I bring to the table. A lot of times, I feel maybe I'm not heard, or I'm not saying it properly.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. Do you want to be heard?
yes.
Okay. Part of you doesn't.
Hmm.
Okay. So let's see what's going on there. Are you responsible for everything someone does from what they told you?
No.
From what you told them.
No.
Okay, and that's not coming up true.
Yeah, that's a survivor guilt. As soon as you said that,
Yeah.
like I felt it, and I was like, okay. And consciously, I know I'm not responsible for everybody's actions.
Mhm.
Uh, though, do I feel levels? Yeah, I guess I still do. And while I'm willing to release it, because I
Mhm.
know I can't control somebody, every individual is an individual.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I think it's coming from that incident there. So
Okay,
you don't want to tell someone something and have them go do something and then get hurt.
sure.
So you're making sure you're not heard.
Mm,
So
okay,
problem solved, right?
there you go.
So are you willing to step out of the story that you are responsible for what people do with the information you give them?
Yes,
Ooh, okay. And so before I ask you to clear this next thing, I want you to really get the context of it. If you're giving people amazing advice with the best intentions and their story causes them to take it and do something and get hurt by it, that's on them.
correct.
So are you willing to step out of the story that if someone gets hurt following your advice, it's your fault and you should feel guilty about
Am I willing to step away from that?
it?
Yes, yes,
Yeah. Okay, that's feeling better. Are you willing to forgive yourself for the times people got hurt taking your advice?
yes,
Okay. And are you willing to step out of the story that you have to make sure you're not hurt so that people won't take the wrong advice?
yes.
Ooh, there we go. Cool. How's that feel?
That feels better.
Yeah.
I feel a shift, and what's funny is I have a now tingle in my throat when we started dealing with the speaking part of it.
Mhm. Okay. Good. Yeah. That's of course throat communication, right? So
Yep, the throat chakra. Yeah,
yeah. Okay. Cool. Do you feel complete with that?
I do. I do. I hadn't really seen it that way, because I do say I'm a protector all the time, but
Mhm.
didn't realize the layers, and that was where it was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. And look at this. We're like on time now. So I'm going to get Jessica to put stuff in the chat. Because we've got other stuff coming through for the Breakthrough Show Network. I have a list here. I just want to make sure it's this week. We got Beyond 2D, My Way, Spirit Sessions, and of course, Project Joy Live coming up this week. And if I'm wrong, let me know, Jessica. So, yes, Beyond 2D, 6 p.m. tomorrow. Yes, I got that one right. Project Joy Live is on Fridays at 1 o'clock Eastern. And Breakthrough Show Flagship is on Fridays at 1 o'clock, and Project Joy is in the mornings. So she's typing frantically because I look for the list, and there we go. Project Joy, 9 a.m. on Wednesday. And David, while that is all coming up, if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do it? We're going to drop a link in the show notes, so it'll be up on the videos, but let's hear it from you.
Well, the great thing is my last name is really unique. So,
Yes.
so you just look for David Chametzky. I might be the only one in the world. I actually, I know there's a cousin who sometimes goes by David as well, but davidchametzky.com, it would be, and with a Z, not an S, if anybody's looking. Social media. So I'm on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'd love to talk to people. I also have a podcast called Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. And I'd love everybody to
Wait. You can't just skip that. Peace, love, and bring a bat.
peace, love, and bring a bat.
Please
You know,
explain.
it's all about being awesome today, being authentic, and it's a little spiritual, a little motivational. There's some stories I bring on guests, and you got to do the work. So it's spiritual, motivational, and a little perspirational as we do the work. And when you swing a bat, it's going for the sweet spot. And if you've ever swung a baseball bat, when you hit the sweet spot, you know you've done your best. And if you could do your best every day, then guess what? You'll eventually be a Hall of Famer, or you'll hit your home runs.
Okay, so that's why you're bringing the bat. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's a little play on the New York accent, and that's where I tie into the charity that I have is also called Goons for Good. We all know a guy, so so it's all these things tie into what I have. If I was a pretty woman, maybe I would call my stuff differently. I'm a guy from New York.
All right, it's a great day to bring a bat.
It's always a great day.
All right, and don't forget we have Saturdays 9:30 a.m. Soul Saturday morning coffee. And if you're a part of the community, you can just attend, and you get to hang out with the hosts and have coffee and chat for a while. And we have a lot of fun, and sometimes we get into some deep topics. So that we can take you in a place you're like, oh, so this is how I'm starting my Saturday. This is kind of cool. So, and Jessica, for your coffee.
Coffee, yeah.
For your benefit.
Yeah.
All right. So, David, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you also for providing the safe space for me, as well as being open enough to work with me as well.
Oh, absolutely. So we will be back at Rewriting Reality the fourth Monday of next month with another guest. And hopefully when I hit live, it'll go live on time next month. Other than that, David, do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience?
No, since we just brought up the peace, love, and bring a bat, I'm like, just swing your bat and hit your sweet spot. So whatever that means to you, knock it out of the park, because when you're doing the best that you can, give yourself the gratitude of enjoying that sweet spot.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm Shiraz. I will be back next month. Thank you so much for attending. We are out of here.